Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to the 2023 Summer of Lovecraft. I'll have more details on how the campaign will actually work during the proper intro to the Summer of Lovecraft. For now though, we need an opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft, so we're going to use Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu from Z-Man Games to help us determine that. In this game, we're trying to save the world from the Ancient Ones waking up. There are a few ways we can lose this game. We need to place a cultist or a shuggoth, but we can't. Both of our investigators go insane. We don't have enough player cards when we need to draw, or Cthulhu wakes up. Now, you're probably wondering with a game like that, Phoenix Knight, how are we going to use Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu to determine the opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft? The way we're going to do that relates to the Ancient Ones waking up. What I've done is I've seeded the Ancient Ones with the 6 Ancient Ones, plus, of course, Cthulhu at the end, in this game that we haven't faced yet in either Christmas in Arkham or the Summer of Lovecraft. So far, we faced Ithaca during Christmas in Arkham 2021, and we won that one 2-1. Nyarlathotep was our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft 2022, and we lost that one by a 3-zip score that wasn't even that close. And Shub-Niggurath during Christmas in Arkham last year, and we won 3-zip. So because we faced them, they're not in this group of Ancient Ones. So when the game ends, the last Ancient One awakened will be our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft, which means the win is essentially a bonus in this game. With that setup, let's go through the characters in this playthrough. I shuffled these up and intended to randomize them, and these are the two that we've got. So we're actually going to redo the game of Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu that we played earlier this year, as we start off with the Occultist on our team. Of course, 4 sanity for both investigators and 4 actions. Special abilities for the Occultist. As an action, move 1 cultist up to 2 locations. And for 2 actions, move 1 shuggoth 1 location. There's the mini for the Occultist, so we'll move that over to the train station. Then we'll take a look at the starting hand. First up, we've got Innsmouth. Next, Dunwich, Kingsport, and finally Arkham. We got 1 of each, so we can't really concentrate anything. Delightful. So I'll explain how everything works once we move up to the board, but for now, let's go meet her partner. Teaming up with the Occultist, we have the Hunter. There's her mini, we'll move her over to the train station as well. Taking a look at the Hunter's special ability. Remove all cultists when doing the defeat a cultist action, and once per turn you may defeat a shuggoth for only 1 action. Let's see what she's got in the starting hand. First up we find Kingsport, then Arkham, next Arkham, and finally Innsmouth. So we actually have a little bit of concentration there. Now, the way that these clue cards are going to work is we actually need 5 of them at a gate location to seal each specific gate. So that's how those will work out. But let's move up to the board because we need to finish up final setup. We need to, of course, spawn our initial enemies. So the first 2 cards that we draw from the summoning deck are each going to get 3 cultists. So first up we find the Church in Dunwich is getting 3 cultists, which is down here. Next card that's getting 3 is the Junkyard over in Innsmouth. These next 2 cards are going to get 2 cultists. The Farmstead in Dunwich gets 2, as does the Docks, which is right here. Then one thing I want to point out, we haven't had it up yet before we spawn the next 2 cultists. This symbol down here isn't relevant right now, but if this pops up later on when we draw summoning cards, that will actually cause any shuggoths on the board to move toward the nearest open gate. So we do need to keep an eye on that. These next 2 cards are getting 1 cultist each. The train station gets a cultist. And the police station in Arkham is getting a cultist as well. Then this last card is getting our first Shoggoth. The Woods is getting our first Shoggoth, which is actually kind of good for us because it's got a couple of ways it can go. But I think we're all set up for this game, so let's drop down to the Occultist and get into our first turn. Unless anything catastrophic happens, I want to bring the Hunter down here to try to take out the 3 cultists here. It's going to be a while before we can get to the Shoggoth over in Kingsport. So action 1 for the Occultist, we'll take the first cultist out. Then for actions 2, 3... actually, you know what I'm going to do here? I'm actually going to 2-3 pull the Shoggoth toward the Great Hall. So the Shoggoth started up here at the Woods. I'm actually using 2 actions with the Occultist to move it down to the Great Hall. And then action 4, I'll give the Hunter Arkham. I did forget to mention, by the way, that I am using my usual house rule around the trade action, where as long as the 2 are together, they can trade anything. In this case, I just happen to want to trade Arkham. So 2 cards for the Occultist. First up, we will find another Arkham. Actually, it might have been better to go the other way with that, but no help for it now. And come on. Oh, for the love of criminy, this does not want to focus. There we go. Kingsport. Alright, then we need 2 summoning cards. First up we find the hospital gets a cultist. That's over in Innsmouth. Right on top of the gate in Innsmouth, as does the theater also gets a Shoggoth. Okay, so moving over to, I'll use the lens cap to track turns. So the Hunter's turn, the Hunter's going to take Arkham from the Occultist for action 1. 2-3, she'll move down to the Church. In action 4, she'll get rid of those 3 cultists. And then 2 cards from the Occultist, or from the deck. The Hunter's hand limit is 7. The hand limit is 7 cards, so we do need to keep an eye on the Hunter's hand. Arkham, which actually would give us a seal right off the bat, and another Arkham, which we would need to travel back to Arkham. That might not be the worst thought in the world. So I will discard 1. Yeah, I can still work with this. So I'll discard Innsmouth, since I've only got 2 Innsmouth cards between us, which means there's a lot still in the deck. So we need 2 summoning cards from the deck. First up we find the Boardwalk gets a cultist, as does the University gets a cultist, and the Shoggoth moves. University and the Shoggoth is moving toward the Dunwich Gate now. Moving over to the Occultist's turn, I think we'll just go do a little bit of cultist hunting here. Action 1 to the University, Action 2 take out the cultist there. Action 3 to the police station, Action 4 take the cultist out. Then 2 player cards for the Occultist's turn. First up we'll find Kingsport. Starting to get some Kingsport cards now, and another Kingsport. So we can get it. So it looks like we can get a Kingsport seal pretty quick, but we need 2 more two more summoning cards. So first up we find the Historic Inn gets a cultist and the Shoggoth moves. Historic Inn and the Shoggoth moves to the farmstead, and the Market gets a cultist. Market is over here in Kingsport, the bus station. Okay, so moving over to the Hunter's turn. Yeah, this will still work. So for the Hunter's turn, action 1, she'll move down to the farmstead, but because we're moving into the Shoggoth space, we actually need to roll the sanity die, and I'm going to get the smaller dice tower for this. Because I keep forgetting that the smaller, the big tower is very imposing, especially on a board this small. So we're going to roll the sanity die. Depending on the effects that we have, we'll have different things happen. I really hope we don't see a cultist. We don't see the 2 cultist result. We lose a sanity, but I can deal with that. I'll put lost sanity over here for the time being. So that was action 1 for the Hunter. Action 2, I'll take out the Shoggoth and we'll draw an artifact card. So I will find Silver Key. The active player can instantly move to any location on the board, which I think we'll use that, and we'll move her straight to the park. That'll save me an action, but it'll mean another roll of the sanity die. Lose another sanity, I can deal with that. Then we'll bring the dice tower out of shot. That was action 1 to move, 2 to the farmstead. Action 1 to move to the farmstead, action 2 to defeat the Shoggoth. Action 3 will use the 5 Arkham clue cards that we have. There we are. And we'll seal the gate and Arkham. It's all clear of cultists already, so no clearing would happen there. Then action 4, we'll move over to the Secret Lodge, start working the Hunter toward Innsmouth. Actually, we could put them together and move Kingsport over. I think that's a better idea. We'll bring the Hunter up to the police station. So 2 cards from the deck we find Dunwich and Kingsport. Okay. So we can definitely get set up to seal Kingsport in the next couple turns, but we need 2 cultist cards. So first up we find the Swamp gets a cultist and the Shoggoth would move, except we just took it out. And the Secret Lodge gets a cultist and the Shoggoth would move again, but we dodged a bullet on that one. So over to the occultist's turn. I think mostly this turn is going to be about shuffling cards around and getting things organized. So I think for action 1, the occultist will take a Kingsport card from the Hunter. Action 2, I'll move a Dunwich over to the Hunter. Action 3, we'll take another Kingsport card and plan on using that to travel. Action 4, I'll move down to the Secret Lodge. 2 cards from the player deck we will find Arkham, which we'll have to discard an Innsmouth. And we should have an Evil Stirs coming up soon. Another Kingsport, which I'll discard, because we've already got the 5 cards. We've already got the 5 clue cards, plus 1 that we can use to travel to Kingsport. So 2 more cards from the summoning deck we find see if I can The graveyard gets a cultist. Kingsport Gate, as does. The factory gets a cultist, which is the Innsmouth bus station. Then moving over to the hunter, she's going to go action 1, 2, 3 over to the junkyard in Innsmouth, which is just off shot. And action 4, she'll take out all 3 of these cultists, because we could definitely use some control over the board right now. So the next 2 cards from the player deck is the Evil Stirs that we were expecting, so we'll move back up top to resolve that in a second. And Dunwich. So let's move back up top for our first Evil Stirs. The first thing we need to do is fight the madness, so we'll have to roll the sanity die for the hunter. Nothing happens, thankfully. Then we awaken then we reveal the next ancient one, aka reveal our least likely opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. So our first ancient one is Atlak Naka. Each investigator puts 1 cultist on their location unless they choose to lose 1 sanity. An investigator may not lose their last sanity token to prevent this cultist placement. So the occultist will place a cultist, as will the hunter. Then we'll draw the bottom card and spawn a Shuggoth there. Yes. Spawn a Shuggoth on the location, so we'll find. The cafe gets a Shuggoth over in Dunwich. Then we'll reshuffle everything and put it back on top. So this was where I derped toward the end of my playthrough, of my last playthrough of Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu, where I actually needed to put this back on top, but I put it on the discard pile, flipped over. We're still only summoning 2 cultists right now because that was the first ancient one that we woke up. We may need to get the hunter back toward Dunwich pronto. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself there, back on top. So now we need 2 cards from the summoning deck. We find the Dox gets a cultist and the Shuggoth moves. That could be bad. So the Shuggoth is now down by the church, and the graveyard gets a cultist. Again, the Kingsport Gate. So with that, let's move over to the occultist's turn and zoom down to her. I'm going to see if I can get the... Okay, yeah, it looks like I can get the occultist and her eventual ultimate destination in shot. So she's over here at the Secret Lodge. Since that's not in danger of triggering an awakening right now, I think I'm okay leaving that for the time being. So action 1, she'll move to the diner. Action 2, she'll discard a Kingsport to move down to the graveyard. Action 3, she'll toss the 5 Kingsport cards to seal Kingsport, which will remove a cultist from each location in the city. And then action 4, she'll defeat the last cultist there to keep the supply somewhat under control. And then 2 cards from the player deck. Innsmouth and 2 Innsmouth. Okay, that's very welcome. Now, before we get into summoning, I should mention that if the game ends right now, in our current state of Ancient Ones, then Atlak Naka will be our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. Just want to make sure there's no uncertainty on how that's going to work. So 2 summoning cards here. The Farmstead gets a cultist, which is right here, as does the factory gets a cultist, and the Shuggoth doesn't move. Alright, which is very welcome there. So moving up to the hunter's turn, The question now is, do we try to go take out the Shoggoth? And I think the answer might be that we have to. Yeah, so for action 1, I'll bring the hunter over to the diner. Action 2, I'll discard Arkham to move down to the church with a Shoggoth. And we'll have to make a sanity roll, so I'll bring the dice tower and shot for that. Yep. Actually got it pretty well front and center here. Placing 2 cultists, that's not the worst thing that could have happened. Worst thing that could have happened would have been losing 2 sanity. Action 3 will defeat the Shoggoth for 1 action and gain a relic card from that we will find. Book of Shadow. Draw, look at, and rearrange the top 4 cards of the player deck. Put them back on top. Which I think we'll do that. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. I'll roll the sanity die first, since we're using a relic. Losing another sanity. This could be dangerous for the hunter, but we do get to look at the top 4 cards of the deck. So first up we find another Evil Stirs, which I'm probably going to kick to the occultist's turn. Innsmouth, which I'm leaning toward giving to the hunter as well. Or the occultist as well, I should say. Warded Box, no sanity roll required to play this card. Until the end of your next turn, players need not do sanity rolls. Place this card in front of you as a reminder. And the Zeus Mirror. You can swap 1 clue card from your hand with the clue card in another player's hand, regardless of where either of you are. Not that completely useful due to our house rule. But I think I'm going to put the 2 relics on top and give the occultist an Innsmouth and an Evil Stirs. Okay, so that was action 1 to move to the diner, 2 to get down to the church, 3 to... 3 to get down to the... Wait, 1 to move to the diner, 2 to travel to the church, 3 to kill the Shoggoth. We're not going to get to that farmstead before our next Evil Stirs, and we're only going to be putting 6 cards back on top. So I'm just going to take out the 2 cultists at the church. Since we had to bury the Evil Stirs, though. So there are the 2 cards that are the aforementioned 2 relics that we get. We looked at those earlier. And then 2 cards from the deck we find. The police station gets a cultist, as does the junkyard. Okay. Alright, so I think this turn for the occultist, I'm going to get her moving a bit, but I'm also going to focus on trying to break up some of these cultist cells. So I think we're going to move the occultist 1 to the wharf, 2 to the market, 3 to move 1 of the cultists on the farmstead to the historic inn, and 4 to move a cultist from the docks to the boardwalk. And then we'll draw from the top of the deck and see we've got the Innsmouth and the Evil Stirs that we put back for the occultist. So let's move back up top to deal with the Evil Stirs. Start off fighting the madness. The hunter couldn't take another bout of fighting the madness. A blank, though, is very welcome. Next, we awaken the next Ancient One, so now Alak Naka will not be our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. The next current on-deck Ancient One for that is Shode Mel, and this is another one I'm not happy. I'm not happy to see him now, but I'm not completely heartbroken to see him at this point. So all players collectively lose 3, 4, or 5 sanity. Unfortunately, the hunter will have to lose, not the hunter, the occultist will have to lose the 3 sanity. But this is a very dangerous spot for us to be in, because if the game ends now, Should-A-Mel is our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. And our next Shoggoth is spawning at the pawn shop, which is actually one location away from the Innsmouth gate. Fortunately, oh no, we are putting 2 Shoggoth move cards on top. That's not great. I almost wouldn't mind seeing both of them come up, just because I know how bad Should-A-Mel can be, especially in Eldritch Horror. But that might be a big ask at this point. At least we broke up some of the big cultist cells. So we're still spawning 2 cultists. So first up we find the Docks gets a cultist and the aforementioned Shoggoth move. And the Junkyard gets a cultist. Thankfully, the Shoggoth does not move this time. Okay, so that will bring us back to the Hunter, and I think now we're just going cultist hunting for the time being. The Hunter's turn is going to be very uneventful. It's going to be, well, I shouldn't say uneventful, because we are going to be doing a lot. Action 1 to the farmstead. Action 2, bye-bye 2 cultists. Action 3 to the Historic Inn. Action 4, bye-bye 2 more cultists. So 2 cards from the player deck we find. I'm hoping to see a pair of Dunwich right here. There's 1 Dunwich. And a second one. Oh, that's beautiful. 2 cards from the summoning deck we find. The Graveyard gets a cultist. The Shoggoth doesn't move. Graveyard, which is the Kingsport Gate, and the Farmstead gets a cultist. Okay, so the question now, as we move into... Wait. Oh, no, that's fine. I think I had one more here. So the question now is, as we move into the occultist's turn, do we focus on trying to break up the cells? I don't think we even worry about it right now. Just because a couple of Awakenings gets us away from Should-A-Mel being our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. Plus, I think we just put both of our current 3s... Yep, both of our current 3s are in the discard pile now. So, I think the Occultist will move 1 to the woods, 2 to the docks, 3, 4 will defeat 2 of those cultists. And then we'll see what we draw for the Occultist. So, first player card up. There's Alhazred's Flame. You may remove up to 4 cultists or 1 Shoggoth from anywhere on the board, but that would need a sanity roll, which I may pop the warded box for, and Dunwich, which we don't particularly need right now. So 2 cards from the player deck we find. The Pawn Shop gets a cultist, and the Shoggoth comes off the board. Let's see, the Pawn Shop and the Shoggoth is off the board, which will trigger our next Awakening. So now Should-A-Mel will not be our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft. The next Ancient one on deck for that is Yig. Sealing Gates requires 1 clue card from a connected town, which we currently don't have with the Hunter right now. So Yig is now our Ancient one that's currently on deck. And the Factory gets a cultist. Factory is the Innsmouth bus station. We are down to 9 cultists right now, so we do need to keep somewhat of an eye on that. Then looking for the Hunter, I think we will pop the warded box, so we don't need a sanity roll until the Hunter's next turn. And then I'll also use the Zeus Mirror to get Arkham from the occultist. I don't need a sanity roll because I used the warded box to use that. Action 1 to the church. Action 2 to the old mill. Action 3 will discard our 6 cards. Our 5 Dunwich. Plus a connected clue card from Arkham because of Yig. To get a seal on Dunwich. And then action 4 will move to the church. 2 cards from the player deck we will find. An Innsmouth. And Alien Carving. The active player can take 3 extra actions this turn. That might be worth popping now while we have free sanity on that. 2 cards from the player deck we find. The police station gets occultist. As does the Secret Lodge gets occultist, and the Shoggoths would move, except the Shoggoth isn't on the board right now. Moving over to the occultist, I think the hunter will pop the alien carving now, so the occultist has 7 actions. And then she'll pop Alhazred's Flame as well to remove up to 4 cultists or a Shoggoth from anywhere on the board. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 are coming off the board. Let's see, then the occultist still needs 2 Innsmouth cards to say nothing of a connected city card. So we're just going to go, I think we're just going to go cultist hunting this turn. Action 1, the occultist will defeat that cultist. 2 up to Boardwalk. 3, 4 defeat these 2 cultists. 5 to the factory. 6, 7 to defeat the cultists at the factory. And then 2 cards from the player deck we find Innsmouth, so we're getting somewhere. We've got the 5 Innsmouth between the 2 of us, and another Innsmouth. So now we've got enough Innsmouth, but we need to find the connected city, whether it's Arkham or Kingsport. And then two cultist invasions we find. The cafe gets a cultist up down in Dunwich, as does the theater down in Kingsport, which is down here by the market. Moving over to the hunter's turn, the warded box is now gone, so sanity rolls are a thing once again. I was doing all the occultist stuff just off shot. I just realized. Sorry about that. Hopefully you guys were following along with the narration. Action 1 will move the hunter to the historic inn. Action 2, I'll toss Dunwich to move to... I'll toss a Dunwich card to move up to the factory. Actually, we'll move to the junkyard. Action 3 will take these 2 cultists out. Action 4 to the pawn shop. This way I get the 2 of them together in the same city. So 2 player cards, as long as we find if we find an Arkham or a Kingsport, Yig is probably our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft, because we'll be able to seal the hospital, the Innsmouth gate on the occultist's next turn. So first up we find an Innsmouth, which is not helpful right now, and a Kingsport. So the occultist can go take the Kingsport, and Yig is our opponent for the Summer. It's looking like Yig is going to be our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft this year. So 2 cards from the cultist deck. We find the University gets a cultist, and the Shoggoth would move. And the Swamp gets a cultist, and the Shoggoth would move again. Alright, moving over to the occultist's turn. Action 1 to the pawn shop. Action 2 she'll take Kingsport. Action 3 up to the hospital. Action 4 using the 5 Innsmouth clue cards. And Kingsport, because we needed a connected city, remember, to seal the gate at the hospital. So we have won the game, but we weren't more concerned with the with the last ancient one that woke up. So, we're going to be having a rematch of our playthrough of Arkham Horror 2nd Edition from over Memorial Day weekend. But for this year's Summer of Lovecraft, Yig is going to be our opponent, and that will do it for this playthrough of Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. So Wednesday, the Summer of Lovecraft proper starts with our game of Eldritch Horror, with the first leg. As for next week, we'll play the first of our 2 Call of Cthulhu adventures for the month, as we play Call of Cthulhu Alone Against the Flames. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.